speaking of done deals, one thing that wasn't a done deal today was the U.S. losing to Sweden in the Women's World Cup 2-1. Even though we dominated most of the first half.
Outshot them too.
Yeah, and a poor. Poor Lapilbet, as the defender for the United States, not only gave up a penalty kick, but then she had an own goal. A rough night for her.
Very rough. But
something that seems to ring true and be at least consistent between the U.S. forwards and the U.S. men's forwards and the women's forwards is, unless it's an accident, because Wambach scored today against Sweden on accident, the forwards for the U.S. women's team just aren't scoring much. It's kind of tough to watch.
You know, as a striker, if you happen to do something that causes a goal, you state that it was on purpose. So, I'm sure Abby meant to score like that.
Yeah, right off her shoulder.
Quite frankly, I'm noticing a similarity is that with the women's national and the men's national is that our midfield seems to be our strong point, and that's true. While Abby is a prolific scorer in the past, she hasn't been of recent. And quite frankly, our strikers, what they do is they add pressure, but our midfield is what seems to be adding the major difference, and especially talking about the wingers to an extent.
Yeah.
You have Cheney who's typically a striker, but been playing more as a midfielder this tournament, and she's been doing wonderful from what I've seen.
Right.
I didn't catch the Sweden game, but still, regardless,
yeah,
she's been playing wonderful.
I thought Rabineau, when she came in, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's Rabineau. Yeah, she's the gal who's saying "born in the USA" into the mic, and I guess Dan Loney didn't like that very much because that's a very actually not an anti-U.S. song. It just kind of points out the United States' faults. Anyhow, her strike in the game against Colombia was fantastic. I think she was kind of the star of that game, and maybe it was her blonde hair. But I thought one thing that is standing out, though, Brett, is a couple things. One, as I watch so many of these games in the Women's World Cup, there are two things that stand out to me: poor goalkeeping and poor defense. And I hate to be negative, but that's kind of what I'm seeing.
Yeah, well, as jumping back to Rapinoe, like you mentioned earlier, I've always been a fan of hers. Back when she was playing with Chicago Red Stars,
I bet.
As short-lived as that might have been, regardless. But anyhow, as far as poor goalkeeping and poor defense, while there is a level of athleticism involved here, I think that comes down to the boiling point: is that it doesn't have to be an unbelievably super powerful shot to a corner. It just has to, it just has to be well placed enough to where a keeper might not have the best ability to grab it or get a hold of it or get a hand on enough to knock it out. Or I don't know how much more I can really go into that.
Yeah, you can't because
terrible,
right. But I mean, the bottom line is that while I think the midfield has been, and we've seen a lot of skill from these women players, and and the Americans
very technical, by the way.
Yeah.
Very technical.
And Marta has been amazing, for instance, and the German team's been brilliant.
Stellar, very stellar.
Yeah, and we're going to be lucky to get by the Brazilians, and I'm trying to be negative, but I mean there's a lot of good play, but where you see a big hole right now in the women's game is the goalkeeping is not as physical, it's not as athletic. In fact, our second goal against Colombia, probably I think it was the second goal that bounced right off the Colombian goalkeeper's hands. Shouldn't have been a goal at all. And the defense in some points has been pretty porous.
Yeah. Well, you see that all tournament, regardless of the national team.
Yep.
And we saw it with the U.S. today.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're supposed to be like the number one ranked team.
Yeah, and we're not.
We show weaknesses. We really do.
We're not the number one team, and we're going to see it because Germany is on fire, and we just got beat by the Swedes, and frankly, the Brazilians look better than us as well, at least artistically and, at least in the open field. They look better than us. So we'll see. That's our first women's soccer segment. All right.
We need to have more.
And so let's not call us misogynists. We're making strides. In fact, we're going to have more coverage of the Women's World Cup deeper into this. We're going to have a gal who plays for Stanford University currently coming on the show, and she's going to give us her take on the World Cup. But, all right, let's get to this next part, Brett, and that's Qatar. And, of course, an article came out today through 442's website. And the whole, let me summarize the article. The article says...
because I stopped reading after the first couple sentences.
Yeah, well, you don't need to know much more beyond the first 3 sentences, because essentially what it says is their officials are at FIFA and Qatar thinking about, and they're asking, or at least contemplating, that they break the games up into 3 periods, like hockey, for Christ's sake.
That right there stopped it for me. I stopped reading.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So... they want to break it up into 3 periods. I don't know exactly when they expect to switch over to make it equal on both sides, depending on the wind that day. Midway through the second period? The
coin toss becomes a little more important at that point.
I think so. Because one team's going to get to play, 2/3 of the game on the better side of the field, depending on the wind. So, the whole thought here, Brett, and I'm going to go on a rant and I'm going to let you go on one too, but if the idiots at FIFA who voted for Qatar to be the home base for the 2022 World Cup, why didn't they consider the heat of the summer as an issue? I mean, are the players supposed to play nude? Because that's what it's going to take. Are you going to allow the water girls and the water boys to come out onto the field during the play to actually douse players with water so they stay cool enough to play? And these revolving, or here's the other idea: why don't we just have revolving subs like they do in college soccer? Instead of having only 3 subs, since it's so hot, you might as well just have kind of revolving subs like hockey, right? Where people can go off and on. Since we're playing 3 periods like hockey, let's just go the whole 9, right? And so how many things are we going to change to make playing a World Cup in Qatar possible and safe? That's my question. Why don't we just hold the World Cup on top of a frickin' mountain, like Mount Everest or something, if we want to get into having World Cups in these incredibly ridiculous areas of the world where it just doesn't make sense? Or maybe we could do it on a volcanic island or something like that, or maybe the Gobi Desert.
Antarctica.
Yeah,
yes.
the Gobi Desert. And someone was talking about it today. Well, why can't they just build make sure all the stadiums are indoor stadiums? I don't know, but we could call David Copperfield, and he might be able to cover the whole country of Qatar during the World Cup with a giant tent or a blanket. Who knows, to keep it cool?
Well, maybe he'll make it disappear.
Well, that's the danger in letting David Copperfield do anything, because it could disappear and then we have no World Cup at all. Or we could possibly build these giant domes over each stadium, and they'll be indoor stadiums. So, oh boy, the real bottom line is, Brett, this was a bad idea from the start, and if all those greedy sons of bitches at FIFA would have realized that from the beginning, we wouldn't be having this discussion, would we?
Well, you mentioned, why didn't they think about this? And in all honesty, with, not being very politically correct about it, but, the money was just too good to pass up.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't want to sound like a bitter USA fan, because I would have loved to have had it in Australia. I would have said, hey, USA had it in '94.
Yeah, I would have sucked it up.
Give it to Australia. Fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah, I would have sucked it up.
So,
yeah.
We talk about whether or not they can make them all indoor stadiums, and in all honesty, that's probably what they should do. However, I don't think that's really going to fly as far as making the stadiums
affordable.
Affordable, thank you. I couldn't think of the term there.
Well, and they're also supposed to be able to break these stadiums down and give them to all the poor countries in the world afterwards. Remember?
Yeah, of course, the poor countries in the world. So
what a joke.
Honestly, this was just a bad decision.
Horrible.
Not even a bad decision. This was a decision made on for the wrong reasons.
Short-sighted. Yep.
Very, very much so. Now they're having to pay for it. And you mentioned the the 3 periods of 30 minutes. That has got to be the dumbest idea ever.
We should allow them to check too. Like
honestly, I don't even want to go into this.
Let's play with hockey goals.
No good about this. There's no good about this at all. I mean, if they can't make it work, why are they hosting it? If they are hosting it, then we might just have to put up with it. You know, what's the difference between a 30-minute half and a 45-minute half in that heat? I mean, yes, I know it could be massive as far as dehydration and stuff. Maybe we should host what youth soccer here in America does and have water breaks.
Yeah.
The ref all of a sudden kills play and say, "Hey, we're taking a water break. We'll get some water."
Or just let the water boys and girls come on the field during play.
Well, if they're nude, I imagine that they probably won't have any girls going out there. But
that could get them in trouble. Yeah, that could be a problem.
Could be a problem.
Yeah.